Hello, hello. Welcome to day 3, workshop 3 of Kettlebells 101. Today, we're going to go right into a warm-up, and then I'm going to show you 2 foundational exercises. We're going to be learning squats today as well as rows. So we're going to start on the floor. We're going to do about a 5-minute warm-up stretch. And this is the same stretch that I teach my one-on-one clients and that I use for my group coaching students as well. So it is full body. We're gonna get all of your joints and tissues and your body moving in all the directions. So let's come on down to the ground. It might be nice to have something underneath your knees. And we're just gonna move through cat and cow. So we're gonna round up through our neck and our upper, mid, and lower back. Round up as much as you can. Exhale your breath, pull your belly button to your back. Inhale, drop your stomach, eyes up. We're gonna do that 3 times. Exhale up into cat. Inhale into cow. And one more time. Now we're gonna be reaching and rotating. So coming back to a neutral spine, we're gonna inhale our right arm up, eyes follow your fingertips, come back to the floor, and then let's go left arm. Reach it up and back down. We'll do that a couple times. And then we're gonna thread the needle. We're gonna reach that right arm through, pushing your shoulder and the back of your arm into the ground. And then we'll do the same thing with the left. Right and left. And then we're gonna bring both hands forward, hips to your heels, and stretch your hips back to a nice child's pose. Take a breath. And then let's come on up into runner stretch. So we're gonna bring our right leg forward. We're gonna tuck our hips under. We're gonna shift our weight forward, and we're stretching your left hip flexor. So we're squeezing our left glute, tucking those hips under and feeling that stretch on the front of our left hip. From here, let's go ahead and straighten our front leg, send your hips back, getting into your right hamstring, back of your knee and calf, making sure you're flexing your foot back at the ankle. Go ahead and turn your right toes down. And then we're gonna do some hip rocks backwards and forwards, just opening up your right hip, getting some movement and external rotation through that right hip. Go ahead and turn back the way you started. And let's pick up our back knee if you can, straighten it. Hands are on the floor, inside your right foot or to the left of your right foot. Then we're gonna take our right arm up and then exhale, pull that elbow down towards the floor. Inhale, stretch up. Exhale, pull down. Couple more times. And then we're gonna go ahead and switch sides. So let's go ahead and do that runner stretch on the left side. So our right knee is down, our left leg is forward. We're gonna tuck the hips under, shift your weight forward, stretching your right hip flexor. You can squeeze your right glute to get into this stretch a little bit deeper. And then we can straighten our front leg, sending your hips back, hinging at your left hip and feeling that stretch down the back side of your left leg. So your hamstring, back of your knee and calf, flexing those toes back. And then we're gonna bend your left leg, straighten your right leg. Oh, I forgot the hip rocks, my bad. Turn your left toes down, maybe move your right knee out to the side. And we're just going backwards and forwards, kind of opening up that left hip, getting some movement. And then we'll turn back the way that we started. Now we'll bring our hands down to the ground, straighten your right leg, left leg is bent, and we're gonna rotate and reach our left arm up. Exhale, pull that elbow down towards the floor. And we're gonna do that 5 times. Okay. Our next stretch, we just have a couple more minutes of stretching, and then we're going to get into our squats and rows for today. Now we're just going to reach those arms up to the ceiling, and then we're going to stretch down either for your knees, your shins, your feet, or maybe the floor. And let's do that again. Big stretch up, inhale, breath. Exhale, reach down. And let's do that one more time. And this time, when you reach down, you can walk yourself out to plank position. So we worked on core bracing yesterday, or in the second workshop, we worked on a plank. So let's just hang out in plank position for a few seconds, shoulders over your hands, feet are together, gluing your legs together. And then we're tightening up that core nice and tight with those six-pack muscles, and holding our midsection up and in towards our spine as opposed to pushing down. Go ahead and send your hips up. Walk your hands back to your feet. Stand up nice and tall. We're gonna do some reverse lunges with rotation. So we're gonna step back with one leg. You can set your knee down with your leg that's in front. So my left leg's in front. I'm just gonna rotate to the left and then come back up. We'll do that again. Step back, other leg, rotate over my right leg or to the right. So we'll just go back and forth a few more times. Again, this is the warm-up that I teach all of my clients, whether they're one-on-one or in my group kettlebell classes. The only deviation is if someone has some mobility issues, or it's just challenging for them to stand up and get back down and stand up again. So that would be the only reason for kind of switching out our warm-up exercises. It gets our body moving in all directions. It gets, as you can tell, your heart rate up. You're kind of getting warm from the inside out, preparing our bodies for movement and for a nice workout. Personally, if I didn't stretch with my clients, I probably wouldn't stretch, because I find it to be a little bit boring. We just want to skip to the good part, right? We just want to skip to the stuff that's going to have the most impact. But I remind myself and I remind other people that we have to warm up if we want to have a good workout. So warming your body up, getting those joints moving, getting your muscles stretched out is going to be helpful so that you can have a successful workout, so that your body is not cramping up, so that you can move through your ranges of motion safely. And when you have good range of motion, that's when you're going to be able to bump up your weights without injuring yourself. So the more we warm up, the more we just embrace that 5 minutes of delaying, starting our workout, the better workout we're going to have. Okay, with that being said, today we're working on squats and rows. So a squat is a primarily lower body exercise, and a row is primarily an upper body exercise. I'm going to talk through the different foundational movements, but essentially it's squats, rows, deadlifts, and overhead presses. Squats and rows are today. Deadlifts and pressing exercises are going to be tomorrow or Thursday. But every exercise basically is one of those movements. Every lower body exercise is some version of a squat or a hinge. Every upper body exercise is some version of a push or a pull. A row is a pulling exercise. So I just want to lay that groundwork for why these are foundational movements, is because every other exercise is rooted in a squat, a hinge, a push, or a pull. Okay, so for our squat, we are going to start with our feet about hip distance apart. And I say hip distance apart, but I actually mean like a little bit wider than hip distance apart. All of our bodies are different. Some of us have really long legs. Some of us have shorter legs. Some of us have open hips. Some of us have tighter hips. So there is not like only one way of doing this, but I do recommend, if you are hip distance apart, if this is hip distance apart, I recommend going a little bit wider than that. And then opening up your toes, because splaying your toes out slightly is going to help us open up our hips. And our squat is going to be is going to require a lot of mobility through our ankles and our hips. Well, those are knees, ankles, knees, and hips. Okay, so with our feet about hip distance apart, a squat is going to be sitting your hips down and back, keeping your shoulders up, keeping your chest up, and ideally getting these thighs parallel to the floor. If you can go deeper, that's great, but it's not required. And if anybody has knee issues, I would recommend, if you're gonna squat at all, just doing like a half squat or squatting to a chair or a table or something that can support you in case you feel like you're gonna fall down backwards. Or just sitting out of squats if it's really painful. Okay, I'm gonna grab a kettlebell. I'm just gonna do this 18-pound kettlebell, and I'm gonna show you how to kettlebell squat. So we're gonna do, there's 100 different ways to squat with a kettlebell, maybe not 100, but there's a lot. Today we're gonna do a goblet squat. So yesterday I talked about the different ways to pick up and hold a kettlebell. We are going to do a two-handed clean. So we're gonna start at the top handle of the kettlebell. So we're hinging our hips back. We're grabbing that kettlebell by the top of the handle. And then as we stand, we're gonna slide our hands around to the sides of the handle. Remember, the sides of the handle are also called the horns. Okay, so I started with my hands on top of the kettlebell handle. I thrust my hips forward and up, pop that kettlebell up to two-handed rack position. So this is how we're gonna hold the kettlebell for our squats. Our feet are about hip distance apart, a little bit wider, like I said. That's for me, specifically. Toes splayed out slightly to get those hips nice and open. Our elbows are gonna stay pointed down. So when we squat, we're not here. Elbows are down, upper arms are hugging into our torso. As we squat, we're sending our hips back and down. The elbows are gonna stay inside of our knees if we're squatting that low. Deep flexion through our ankles. It's okay for your knees to go over your toes. We wanna keep our shoulders up and our chest up. When I say shoulders, I mean your chest up. And then as you stand, we're gonna drive our feet into the floor, push the floor away as we stand up nice and tall. So if you wanna do that with me from the beginning, we'll start with the kettlebell right in between our feet. We're gonna hinge to grab the top of the handle. We're gonna pop it up, and now we're grabbing the sides of the handle or the horns. Elbows are pointed down. Kettlebell is underneath your chin and it's away from your body a few inches. So we're not resting on our chest. Elbows pointed down, feet are glued to the floor, toes, heels, sides of your feet, all the things. Go ahead and push those knees out. Hips are going down and back, chest is up. Drive your feet into the floor to stand. Let's do 5, and our pace or tempo is gonna be 2 to 3 seconds on the way down. Hold it for a beat, come up in 1 second. Here we go, 3, 2, 1, pause, and up. 3, 2, 1, pause, and stand. 3 more. As we're standing, we're exhaling, we're squeezing our glutes, we're squeezing our quads, and then we're taking an inhale breath on the way down, exhale at the top. Let's go ahead and rest. Our squats are primarily working our quads and our glutes, but as you could tell from probably doing that with me, as we hold the kettlebell in our arms at the front of our body, our back is working too, our biceps are working. So it is a lower body dominant exercise. However, when you're holding a weight like we are with the kettlebell, it is having a total body impact. So it is great all the way around, not just for your quads or your glutes. I can feel it everywhere. I can feel it in my biceps, my back, all the things. Okay, so that is a squat. That is just the most basic goblet squat. We could also, and I use all of these variations in my group fitness classes, and I use these with my one-on-one clients too, but there's, you know, a million different versions of squats. We could do a single arm rack position squat. Now this is going to challenge your core as well, because we're weighting ourselves just on one side. So our other side is having to also stay nice and contracted so that we can keep our body upright and balanced throughout the squat. We could do single arm rack position on one side. We could do the other side. I don't do this very often because it requires tons of upper body mobility, but foreseeably, you could do an overhead squat. You could do, like I said, lots of lower body exercises are a variation of a squat. A lunge is a variation of a squat because it is quad dominant. It requires a lot of flexion through your ankles, your knees. So tons and tons. Oh, we could do double rack position squats. Lots of squat variations. But for today, I really just wanted to expose you to the standard kettlebell goblet squat. By the way, if you guys have any questions related to the squat or the row as they come up in your head, please feel free to write it in the chat and I'll make sure I answer it at least by the end. So I want to move on to a kettlebell row. And so a kettlebell row, again, is primarily an upper body exercise. We're going to be focusing on your upper back and your biceps. But as we do the row, again, there's a million different ways to do a row. But we are going to be stabilizing with our core and stabilizing with our lower body. I think the simplest and the most approachable way to do a kettlebell row for beginners is the split stance row. So this is going to be a single arm exercise and our legs are going to be in a split stance. So if we're rowing with our right arm, which is how I want you guys to start, your left leg is going to be in front and your right leg is going to be behind you. You're going to have the most control and stability with your back heel down. So I don't want you up here on your toe doing the row. I want your back heel down. Your back leg is going to be straight and your front leg is going to be bent. So my left leg is bent. I'm going to brace my left hand on top of my left thigh. Before I even start, I want to get my shoulders square and my hips pretty square as well, stabilizing through your core. So that core bracing that we learned yesterday. And then when you're ready to go, let's pick up that kettlebell. You're just holding it at the top of the handle. And my hand is in a neutral position. So my wrist is facing the midline of my body. So from here, you can see my shoulders are squared up, meaning I'm not like this or like this. So squared up shoulders, tight abs, back heel is down. And then from here, you're just going to pull that elbow back and think about bringing your wrist up to your, if you had a pocket, up to your hip pocket. Okay. Exhale as you row, inhale back down. Let's do a couple more. Nice neutral neck, just gazing maybe at the floor, a few inches in front of your front toe. So a row is a pulling exercise where think about you're pulling the weight towards you. Let's go ahead and do that on the opposite side. So now your right leg is going to be in front. Your back leg is straight. Your heel is down. So there is, you know, your toes aren't straight on. I have a little bit of like a 45-degree angle in my back leg. Go ahead and pick your weight up, square up your shoulders, brace your right hand on the front of your right thigh. Keep those abs engaged, and we'll do about 5 rows on the left side. Good. Some of the things that I see really commonly are people going really fast through their exercises. Okay, it's not a race. We want to be engaged and thoughtful and have a nice mind-body connection through our muscles and our movement and our brain. So when we're at the top of the row, that would be here, we're feeling our biceps, we're feeling our upper back muscles, we're holding it for a second, and then we're extending back down, keeping our shoulders square, taking a breath, exhale, inhale back down. Exhale on exertion, inhale back down. Okay, so what I would love to do now is I would love to do a superset. And a superset is basically just combining two exercises to make more efficient use of time. So a lot of times in my group classes, I'll superset, and this is what we're going to do today. I will superset a lower body exercise with an upper body exercise so that we don't require a ton of rest in between each exercise and each set. So while your lower body is working, say in your squat, your upper body's not doing that much work. And then when you're doing your rows, your upper body is doing the most amount of work and your lower body can rest. So therefore we can, not spend 20 minutes resting. We can work for 10 minutes. We're probably working for like 7 or 8 minutes of those 10 minutes. And the other 2 to 3 minutes are resting, grabbing water when we need to, etc. So we're not going to do 10 minutes of work. We're just going to do 2 sets. So we're going to do a set of 10 squats. Then we're going to do 10 rows on each arm. Then we'll go back to our squats and we'll go back to our rows. And that's, a very common way that I set up my group workouts and my one-on-one workouts for that matter. So we're going to put our feet in squat stance. So a little bit wider than hip distance apart, toes are out. We're going to pick up that kettlebell from the top of the handle, pop it up into two-handed rack position. Elbows are down. Kettlebell is a couple inches away from your chest. And we're going to go ahead and sink our hips down and back into that squat, elbows inside your knees, push the floor away as you stand. We're going to do 10 reps. Inhale down, exhale, stand nice and tall. At the top of your squat, we just want to think about lengthening your body, stacking your shoulders, your hips, and your heels. There is no need for an extra hip thrust. See what that does to my back, and it gives up that tightness through my abs. So we're just standing up, squeezing, taking an exhale breath, making sure our feet are staying nice and connected to the floor. Let's do a couple more. And I forgot to tell you guys, but I'm just using the same kettlebell for both of these movements. It's 18 pounds. You guys can use whatever you want, whatever works. A lot of times people start with a light weight for these things and then move up as they feel more comfortable and confident in the movements. A lot of times people like to start with a lower weight for their upper body. But in terms of upper body exercises, rows are pretty much our strongest exercise. We're going to be able to pull the most amount of weight in a row, usually a lot more than an overhead press or something similar. Okay, setting up on the right arm for your rows, left leg's in front, right leg is in back, shoulders square, abs engaged, back is nice and flat. Let's get 10 rows. That's 10. And now we can switch sides. Right leg is in front, left leg is trailing, shoulders are square, abs engaged, go ahead and brace on the front of your thigh. Left arm, wrist is in a neutral position. Pulling that weight up to your left hip pocket, squeezing your upper back and your bicep at the top of the rep. And then nice and slow on the way down. If you feel like your weight is too light, one of the ways that you can compensate for that is just by moving slower, especially on the descent as you're straightening your arm back out. You can really slow that down and you'll start to feel like this exercise is getting harder and harder and harder. Let's do 2 more rows. Then we'll go right back into your squats and we'll get that last set of squats and rows. Okay, so we're gonna start with the kettlebell on the ground. We're gonna pop it up into 2-handed rack position. So hands on the top of the handle, pop it up. Make sure our feet are where we want them to be. Keep them glued to the ground. Chest is up, elbows down, and let's come into our first squat. Pulling those knees nice and wide out over your pinky toes if possible, creating space, creating that hip opening that we need for a nice deep squat. Again, if you're not able to squat super low yet, don't worry about it. Practice really helps. And if you have any knee problems or issues, remember, try not to push yourself. You got to listen to your body and make sure you're only doing what you can do today with the body that you have. Let's do 1 more. And then on our rows, let's switch it up. Let's go left arm first. So right leg is going to be in front, left leg is trailing, bracing on the front of your right thigh. And let's do our 10 rows with our left arm. And we can switch. Okay, we're almost done. We're gonna do 10 rows in this split stance. I'll show you a couple different row variations, just super simple. It's just a position change with our feet, or we can change positions with our hands. Instead of being in a neutral grip, we could be overhand or underhand, AKA prone or supinated grip. Let's do 3 more. And all of the variations are fine. It's more about like when you change your arm position or you change the position of your feet, it's all variations of the same exercise. And say, if we move to an underhand grip, it might be targeting our bicep a little bit more. If we're more overhand, it might be targeting the back of your shoulder or your back a little bit more. And honestly, I think it's a way to not get bored by doing the same version of the same exercise over and over and over. I've been working with kettlebells almost exclusively for 5 years, and I'm still not bored, but I also change up the version of exercises I do because I do start to get like, I've done this so many times. Let me change it up. Let me use 2 kettlebells. Let me try this. So a couple different versions of rows that are really common is you could do like a suitcase row where the kettlebell would be to the outside of your body. And instead of being in a split stance, we're just hinged at our hips. Our back stays nice and straight. You can still brace, and maybe we could row to the outside of our body. You could do the opposite of that, where your feet are going to be more apart and your arm is inside of your body, and you could row here. And now I've just demonstrated 2 other rows. My arms have been in a neutral position, so you could also change that. So we could go supinated grip here, or we could go overhand grip here. I don't love this position as much because it's a little bit more taxing on your shoulder, especially if you have issues already going on, which a lot of people do. You could also rotate through one position into another, or from a neutral grip to a supinated grip, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in a nutshell, we went over a warm-up, which we'll do again Thursday and Friday. We learned kettlebell squats and kettlebell rows in the most sort of like basic and fundamental way. There's all different versions of those, but I think if you get a goblet squat down first, you're super prepared for those other versions. If you get a split stance row down, then you're prepared for a bunch of different variations as well. So Thursday is going to be deadlifts and overhead presses, another lower body exercise and upper body exercise. We'll do everything kind of the same tomorrow as we did today. And then Friday, we're gonna put everything together. We're gonna warm up, we're gonna move through all 4 of those movements in a little 30-minute strength workout. And for everybody who shows up live, you will have a chance to win 1 of 3 fun prizes. So I hope to see you guys there on Friday and Thursday. And I thank you for being here today. If you guys have any questions and you want to stay on and unmute yourself and ask it, then that is good with me. Or if you want to type anything in the chat, that would also be awesome. But I just want to say thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Rachel, I have a question.
Yes.
So sometimes it's hard to figure out where my knees should be during the squat and how to correct that.
Are they collapsing?
Like going forward? No, like going forward, like over my toes, right? Like too far.
And you're feeling like that's a bad thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the stance on knees over toes has changed over the years. And maybe you're thinking about like, oh, you know, I remember back in the day, they told us not to let our knees go over our toes. And what happens when we stop using a range of motion is that over time, as we get older, this happens anyways, but if we compound it with trying really hard not to, you know, go into a position that's going to be quote unquote bad for us, is that we're going to lose mobility through our ankles. So if you look at a squat, our ankles have to move deeply to get into that position. So you sound like you're a female and your name is Anna. So I'm assuming in your life, you've worn high heels and you've had your toes or your ankle in this like position like this. So this would be a extended position. And we tend to not spend a lot of time in this flexed position. And so if we're only squatting this way and we're never letting our knees come past our toes or even to our toes, then we're going to lose more and more of that ankle mobility, which means that our joints and our tissues and our muscles aren't being worked through their full range of motion. So the lower you can squat, the more your knees are going to go over your toes. And that's okay. As long as you're not having like knee pain when you're doing it, it's okay. We want to promote more of that and less of just like sticking your butt out, letting your shoulders come forward, letting your torso collapse. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful to know that it's like not such a horrible thing, but like as long as you're not feeling any pain.
As long as you're not feeling pain. How old are you, by the way? Because I know like the older we get, the more this stuff like comes into play.
Yeah, 51.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of my clients, I have rings over here. And so I'll just show you, like if they're not able to squat as deep as they want to, or I want them to, sometimes we can use something. It doesn't have to be a ring. It could be like a pole, or it could be like my hands, but I will have them hold on to some rings, squat really deeply, and like let those ankles, you know, flex, let your knees come over your toes, just sit into your squat, and then use those rings to help pull you out of it. Because sometimes if you're squatting really low, the problem is you can't get back out of it, but it's a nice exercise just to get a little bit more stretched out, just to get that movement through your ankles and your knees and your hips, and then be able to still like pull yourself out of it. So instead of just doing like air squats as a warm up, sometimes I have people like do an assisted squat just to warm up and get more of that movement through their ankles, knees, and hips. So that might be something to consider, even if you're not squatting super, super, super deep with your weight. Maybe you're getting some deep squats in your warm up and then just doing the best that you can when you're weighted. The nice thing about the kettlebell is that weight in front of you helps you so that you're not going to fall over backwards or down when you're in your squat.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else? Now that one person has asked, maybe you're like, I'll ask my question. Okay, well, if you guys have any questions that come up, feel free to email me or ask tomorrow or the next day. Have a great rest of your day, you guys. I'll see you back real soon.